Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in this session. Um, it's just 5:30, and people are still joining. So we'll just wait for a couple of more minutes to see to let more people join and be able to take full advantage of the session. And then I'd say about 5:32 or so we'll start the session. So please bear with us. We will try not to delay too long, just a couple of minutes. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session on US Classrooms Global Skills with US University alumni. My name is Deborah Rosario, and I am an Education USA advisor, and I'm your host for this session. Before I begin, I will do a quick introduction to Education USA, the session, and our alumni as well. So to start with, Education USA is your official source on US higher education. We're a network supported by the US Department of State. We offer accurate, comprehensive, and current information on US universities. And this is a global network with over 430 centers in over 175 countries. In India, we operate in 4 centers and we are headquartered in New Delhi. So in the chat messages, you will see information, websites for us and some information about us. You can stay connected with us by scanning this QR code and get updates about sessions like these. And, I'll leave this on for a couple of seconds. And you can also follow our updates on social media. So we're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And usually our handle is at Education USA India. So feel free to follow us on social media as well for more updates. All right, a couple of housekeeping announcements. Um, to avoid distractions, we have muted cameras and muted audio and turned off your cameras for participants, that is. However, the chat will be open, so you can ask questions in the chat. We'd request you to save the questions for the end as the session, you can ask more relevant questions based on the discussion in the session. And we request you to keep your questions relevant to the discussion. And of course, if you have any technical difficulties, do reach out directly to either me or my colleague. We are signed in as EdUSA, and we'll try to help you with any technical difficulties. And generally, for better audio quality, use headphones or earphones. So now, moving on to the session itself, the kind of core idea of the session is that education is not just a degree, but it is a training ground for your professional, journey, both technical skills and transferable skills. Whether that's critical thinking or ethical reasoning, applied learning, research, whatever that is, communication skills, and so forth. And so, what are the best practices that universities can put in place to help you transfer successfully into a professional journey? US universities have a great track record of launching students into their professional journeys. And so this session titled US Classrooms Global Skills will showcase the best practices that US universities offer to help you transition into globally relevant professional journeys and careers and career outcomes. So that's the overarching core idea for today, and we're going to do this in three parts. We're going to start with what a US education trains you for, in terms of skill sets. We're not really focusing on the technical side of things because that's obviously what education will cover, but more on transferable and kind of soft skills that education can train you for. Then we'll talk about how our alumni, and I will introduce them shortly, use these skills to transition successfully into professional careers and professional journeys in India. And then we'll do a final quick wrap up round. And then there'll be time for Q&A. So at that stage, it's a great opportunity. You can put your questions into the chat box and we will take them from there. And so now we'd love to introduce our speakers to you, and I can really say that this is such a joy and honor for me. I've worked with Rishabh and Jerusha for many years. I've worked with Jerusha, back in the day before she'd even, studied in the US, and then have watched with a lot of admiration her career as she studied and then came back and has transitioned so successfully into a US life. And of course, Rishabh, we've worked, Rishabh has a long established career here in India, and we've worked with him many times over the years in these Education USA sessions. So let me quickly introduce the two of them in a little more detail to you. I'll start ladies first, so I'll start with Jerusha. Jerusha D'Souza is an entertainment and technology lawyer and graduated with a Master's of Law in Entertainment Law and Technology Law from the University of Southern California, Los Angeles in 2020. She has her own independent practice and works with artists, musicians, influencers, actors, and other talent across the world. She also works with agencies and companies and helps with their intellectual property, contractual, and entertainment law needs in music, film, television, gaming, social media, endorsements, book publishing, sports, and more. And I follow Jerusha's social media, and I've seen the really interesting stuff she gets up to, and her clients do. So, for instance, if you've heard of the Ollie Fest in Bangalore that happened, I think last year, it was the end of last year, those were clients of Jerusha, and I'm excited to say that Jerusha has also recently become a Zumba dance instructor as well. You can imagine the totally cool kind of thing that Jerusha would do. Rishabh also has a very established career here in India. Rishabh Shah has completed his engineering studies in digital electronics, computer engineering, and then master's in information technology from the Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. And he runs a successful business in the field of industrial electronic components. His company deals with manufacturers producing instrumentation products, renewable energy technologies, control panels, automotive electronics, IoT, and allied applications, providing them with the core technologies of electronic components right from the design stage until mass production. He's also an active member of All India Radio and Electronics Association, which represents the electronics fraternity in India and communicates on the subjects of development, policy making in industrial electronics, semiconductors, and sustainable technologies with the state and central government. So, very highly respected figure in the world of electronics and electrical components and so on. Thank you, Rishabh and Jerusha, once again for joining us and for being on our panel today. And I'm going to kick off with the first section, what a US education trains you to do, and ask you if, let's start with Jerusha, if you can share for yourself in your journey, what made a US classroom distinctive and what were the kinds of skills that it trained you in?
Hey everyone, so lovely to be on this panel. I'm gonna jump right in because we don't have that much time. What I thought the classrooms was so much different from what I was studying back at home is that we had different types of classrooms. We had a lecture-based classroom, which was 100 plus students. We had seminars, which was smaller, and then we had clinic based. Seminars were on some of the electives and niche subject matters, and then we had clinics, which were like hands-on work that we would do with like a legal aid sort of class. And that was very interesting because whenever I studied, we had one type of classroom. We all sat there and the teachers sort of rotated. In this instance, we rotated. And I think what was very important to do at any given point of time is prepare for classes in advance, which is something whilst our professors back at home tell us to do, we never did. But there, if you didn't do it, they were moving on from that. And if you were asked questions, and cold calling is a real thing. Cold calling is basically they'll pick up a name from a list and they call out to you, and you need to know the answer. It's not as scary as it sounds. In law school, it was because sometimes they would ask you sections, so you best be prepared with the answer. And also, I realized that in class, what really helped, they tell you this over the course of time. A lot of your the style in which you study is application based rather than rote learning, which was a lot of unlearning for me. Um, and for that purpose, we didn't have to really like write down sections rather than apply them to our exams or, the tests that happen. Outlining your classroom studies is very important. And it also gives me a structure even till date when I go back and, refer to some of my notes. If I need to know a specific subject area, it's very easy for me to look back at those notes because I had the topic and I had the points discussed, what I read, what the professor thought, my observations. And that's you will once you get into the classroom structure, I think they sort of tell you how to navigate through that. But I think that is very important to do. It gave me clarity of thought, outlining my classes, and I still use it today. So it's that was the difference and the key characteristics of a classroom when I was studying.
Thanks, Jerusha. So for both of you, Jerusha and Rishabh, apologies, Rishabh, just jumping off this idea of the kinds of skills it trained you for, do you feel in what ways did the learning environment in the US train you to ask questions or present ideas? And, how does that help you today in your professional careers?
So, one of the biggest mindset shifts I experienced in my US university was, as an engineering student, will be more, they'll appreciate what I'm saying. So questions were not interruptions. Okay. They were expected. And in many traditional classrooms, you try to get the right answer. Okay. So in the US classroom, you're trained to challenge assumptions. If you present an alternative theory, your professors will not shut you down. Okay. They would often say, convince me. Come on, convince me. Now that changes everything. Okay. You're no longer passively receiving information, you're building arguments. So what stood out to me was structured participation, which was the culture, your case discussions, lab presentations. Like my first lab was using Ethereal, which is a software, and stripping on how an email is sent and actually the SMTP packets in the networking class, explaining each packet in detail. Your peer reviews, you had to articulate your reasoning. So it wasn't enough to say that something's working. Okay, you had to explain why it works and what assumption it depends on. So over time, that does something very powerful. It builds your intellectual confidence. This is the key ingredient in today's time, which I believe will enable us to take risks. As without taking risk, innovation cannot be born. And since I'm from the engineering background, R&D is at the core. Unless you're confident on yourself and you have that intellectual confidence, you'll be able to take the risk. So I remember working on a project where we had to redesign a completely new peer-to-peer application, a workflow. So I disagreed with the entire dominant approach in my group. Back home, I might have hesitated, but the classroom culture had trained me to back my position with data, logic, and structured communication. So when I presented my reasoning clearly, the team actually adopted it. So today, when I negotiate, so I'm translating this with what I do today. So today, when I negotiate with my OEM clients, OEMs are people who actually manufacture for these larger brands or evaluate supply chain systems, the same habit shows up. I'm comfortable articulating a position respectfully but firmly. Say something on giving engineering solution on building a better electronic switching, on why you should use this and not this. And I was trained to defend ideas with reasoning and not emotions. So for students listening today, I would say this, that confidence doesn't come from personality. It comes from repeated exposure to structured debate and presentation. So the US learning environment gave me that repetition, and that repetition actually built that professional confidence.
I just think piggybacking on what Rishabh said, and no, like on asking questions, no one shames you for asking the
Yeah.
question. Like you ask the question, if you don't have the confidence to do it in a classroom, you can go later in the office hours and do it. If
Yes.
that's also not an option, you can go to your teaching assistant. If that's also not an option, you can email your professors. Everyone at the university level is very helpful. Everyone wants to help you. They will answer everything that you need in whatever way they can. And I think that was so important
Yes.
because, sometimes sometimes you know the right answer or you know the right question to ask, but you're so afraid to do it because of the people in the class. And, you think that people are going to judge you. And I think that that doesn't happen. Also, you have to understand that you're sitting in a classroom, which is a melting pot of many cultures. There are a lot of people that probably cannot speak the language very well. And I don't think that shows a lack of intelligence. It's just everyone comes from different backgrounds. So the professors are very mindful of that as well. And I think also the fact that people come from different backgrounds, everyone's critical thinking and analysis are very different, and how they problem solve are also very different. So what was very interesting in our classes is that it was not just a question to the professor. The professor would also open it up. I mean, it was a law school class, so obviously everyone had their own opinion, but everyone with a single question would come up with very different reasonings to it. And I think that was very interesting at any given point of time, because whilst we think that, law is black and white, it's not, it's gray. Everyone comes from a different culture, so they came with a different viewpoint. We don't come from the same law background. Also, there's common law, there's civil, there's religious, so people come with that also. So it was a very unique class setup at any given point of time.
Lovely. Thank you both for that. Rishabh, were there opportunities to gain leadership experiences or skills during your time at a US university?
Yes, absolutely. And importantly, leadership in the US university context isn't about, titles. It's about accountability. So, like someone said, leadership is not a position but an action. And I truly believe in this, which actually a lot of them come from the US education. So at RIT, the university that I went in, most of the coursework was team-based. So your engineering labs, IT simulations, your business system projects, everything required coordination. You had to manage timelines, resolve disagreements, divide responsibilities, and ensure delivery of quality. What I appreciated was that leadership rotated. You couldn't hide. So sometimes when you feel that, okay, somebody's going to, lead it for you, one day it's going to come to you. So at some point, you were expected to lead. I distinctly remember leading a cross-functional project where we were building a systems integration prototype, the peer-to-peer network. My team had members from different technical strengths. Some were hardware focused, some were coding specialists, some were process oriented. The real leadership challenge was not technical. It was alignment. I learned how to break complex goals into actionable deliverables, conduct short review meetings, address underperformance diplomatically, own outcomes, even when things went wrong. So the last one is critical. If a deadline slipped, you didn't blame, you just recalibrated onward. So today in my company, which operates in the industrial electronics ecosystem, these skills are indispensable. We deal with suppliers across countries, OEM customers, compliance requirements, and evolving technology. Leadership is about systems thinking and clarity under pressure. So the US environment trained me in structured accountability. And I would say this to students: leadership is not charisma, it is an operational clarity plus communication discipline. That mindset was formed during my time in the university.
Thanks, Rishabh. That was really insightful. God, I think there's a lot of tips in there for people about what actually leadership, comprises of and
Yeah.
what skills to develop. Jerusha, how important was hands-on experience as opposed to more theoretical classroom learning during your US experience?
I think they come hand in hand because I do a lot of theory, but I don't necessarily use a lot of that theory in practice. That's different from my LLM in the US because I did entertainment law. And it was really fun because when we were studying in class, we would learn things like my professor would play Barbie Girl on screen and we would analyze the song and the lawsuit that went after that. We would talk about Taylor Swift being the greatest businesswoman ever in the music space. We spoke about Andy Warhol's art and whether, it was an infringement or not. And these are all, it was almost like it was hands-on because we were seeing this happen in real time. And honest to God, I feel like it was more fun studying about it than actually putting it into practice, because if you try and mirror that into your actual contracts, it's a nightmare. So it was really fun to learn about it. But I did contracts in the first semester and I did theory. And then in the second semester, I did negotiations in contracts. And I think that was very interesting because I learned the basis, which I cemented my roots, which is very important. And then I did, even in our negotiation class, we did cement our roots. But what we would have, which was very fun, was that we would pick up a contract or we would pick up deal terms, sit across the person sitting by me, and not in very technical sense, but just negotiate a deal. Because what our professor would say that a lot of you guys in the entertainment space might not end up doing law. You all will end up becoming talent agents and managers, and you don't necessarily rely on the legalities involved. I'm on 60% of my job is just the entertainment business. So it's just how you structure your arguments and how you negotiate and how you understand where leveraging comes from, which is not something you'll read. It's something that you will learn. So that was very important for me. I think that gave me a lot more confidence now to be able to structure my negotiations. Everyone thinks that a negotiation is an argument. It's not. If it's a win-win or a lose-lose, nobody is going to, profit from it. It has to be a balance and there has to be a middle ground in it. Also, we would have these symposiums in on campus, which were these entertainment law symposiums, and it would gather the best of the best in the industry. They would also bring in like actors and singers to come and be on the panelists, and everyone in that room felt like equals. And I would meet my professors, and also we were studying about the things that were happening in real time. Like at the time when I was doing it, it was streaming wars. All like Peacock was coming in, Disney Plus was coming in, and we had so much knowledge about it that I was able to just have very casual conversations over a cup of coffee with, people that worked with Fox or Universal. And it was very easy and free flowing. I think that was for me, that was also a hands on experience because I don't think I would have the guts to do that. I was very young. And only because I was backed with knowledge. Somebody that had 20 plus years of experience could even entertain me. And I came with a unique perspective to it. I did my homework. I didn't just go to them and just ask questions. I did my homework and I knew where India was positioned when they were positioned. So it was a nice juxtapose to have that conversation. So that was also very interesting, in my opinion, that was my hands-on experience. I didn't have too much time to kind of like work also there. So like 9 months, and then I graduated in the pandemic. So the small things that I got were also very important.
That sounds fascinating, Jerusha. Really fascinating insight into how a US classroom works and gives you that, even within the classroom structure, gives you that hands-on experience. Um, Rishabh, for you, did you develop any specific skills in the US at that time that you still, use that you now use in your current role?
Yes, of course. And interestingly, not just technical ones. Of course, I gained strong foundation in system design, IT infrastructure thinking, applied problem modeling. But the most transferable skill I developed was the structured problem solving. At RIT, we were constantly pushed to move from theory to implementation. You don't just learn about a system, but you actually build one. So you don't just study failure analysis, you simulate failures. So that builds something powerful. You stop being intimidated by complexity. Today, when we evaluate, in my perspective, industrial components, supply chains, technology integration, I approach problems systematically, define constraints, identify dependencies, map the risks, evaluate cost versus performance trade-off, which we all have to go through, implement with measurable metrics. Now, that framework directly came from my academic training. Another critical skill was data-backed decision making. So professors challenged us to quantify assumptions. That habit stays with me in boardroom discussions today. So when proposing a new procurement model or an automation workflow, I don't argue emotionally, I argue with data. And perhaps the most underrated skill I developed was professional documentation. So writing reports, preparing structured presentations, documenting processes. These sound simple, but they differentiate professionals globally, and it comes out with a lot of hard work and conviction. In India's corporate ecosystem, where speed is high and there's a lot of ambiguity, clarity of documentation creates that credibility. So yes, the US education did not just give me knowledge, it gave me what is called as professional operating system.
Nice, nice term. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. For both of you now, I'm going to ask you about a few different types of skills. Actually, Rishabh, you've covered some of them. So feel free to pick out others. You don't have to respond to all of these, but from skills like problem solving, decision making, navigating uncertainty or ambiguity, moving from theory to real world impact. I feel like both of you have covered some of this already. How did your US education make a difference in developing these skills? So I'll repeat these again: problem solving, decision making, navigating uncertainty and ambiguity, and moving from theory to real world impact. You can reflect on just one or two from these, each of you.
Sure, I can go. Do you want to go first, Rishabh?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, cool. With regards to problem solving, my entire job is problem solving. Every day it's problem solving, right? And like I said, the difference in the style of which I studied helped me a lot. I don't think I had that skill when I was in India. Not for anything, it's just how our education system is structured. You rote learn rather than apply the knowledge you use. Once you start learning to apply the knowledge you use, that's where problem solving kicks in. So that's what helps me. So now I know none of my clients want to know what section we are dealing with or what law we're dealing with. They just want to know one of my clients asked me this yesterday. They said, "Hey, Jerusha, we're using AI to make content on our pages. And that we're not using somebody's image necessarily, but we're putting in an input. And what if it ends up looking like you? What are the implications that it would have?" So I said that the law is very gray around it and stuff like that. And they were like, "We don't want to know what the legal sections are. Can we do it or not?" Right? So in that, I can't waste time picking up the law, explaining, breaking it down. No. They want to hear it in very simple English. Can I not do it? Usually the answer with lawyers is always, it is a gray area. And that was the answer that I did give. But I did also analyze how you could do it or not, right? So that was very important for me to be able to do that in a very quick turnaround time. And also, I think what the US education taught me is that it's okay to ask for help. The reason when we were chatting earlier on the call, I joined in early and I said, "Give me 5 minutes, guys, I'm working." It's because I was asking one of my peers some very silly, like a very stupid thing that I should have known, but I just couldn't get the answer to it, and I needed to respond to my client immediately. And I asked the question, and I also apologized for it being silly. And my peer was like, "It's fine. I have these questions sometimes." So I just realized that sometimes we are so afraid to. I mean, I think that's how like we are in the Indian culture. We're so afraid to ask these questions because we feel like we'll be shamed or made fun of. Who cares if you're made fun of, right? And I think that's what I think the confidence that I got to be able to just ask what I need, put myself out there. That was an important lesson for me.
And, just to kind of add something, only courageous people can ask for help, so the courage also comes from there.
Yep.
So, yeah. So I'll just move on to, so if I had to summarize the impact of the US education in one phrase, it would be, it trained me to operate in an ambiguity, completely. So in engineering and IT environments, not every problem has a clean textbook solution. In fact, in electronics, the most difficult task is to identify root cause. So if your Walkman of your TV or if your, gadget is not working, you just don't find the right guy to fix it. Because once you know what the problem is, fixing is very easy. So, in fact, the most real world challenges are messy, incomplete data, shifting variables, and human factors. So, at RIT, many assignments were open ended. So, professors intentionally did not give full instructions. At first, that was very uncomfortable. You want clarity. But over time, you realize that the discomfort is the training. So, it teaches you to ask better questions, make assumptions explicitly, test the hypothesis quickly, and iterate again. So in business today, especially in technology and industrial component space, market shift, supply chain fluctuation, compliance norms evolve. Decision making requires the calculated risks. Because I was trained to navigate open-ended problems, I don't freeze in uncertainty. I actually deconstruct it. So, and importantly, the theory was always tied to execution. We weren't allowed to stay conceptual. We had to demonstrate an output, whether through prototypes or simulations or through performance metrics. That habit of translating theory into measurable kind of results is something I use daily. So for students here, some of the key insight is the value of US education isn't just information. It's the cognitive training to function in a complex system. And that cognitive flexibility is, I think, globally transferable. So I think that's the takeaway.
Well expressed, Rishabh. Nicely put. All right. So we've been talking about, the skills the US education trains you for, and we'll start moving forward now to the transition, your experiences of the transition to professional life in India. So I'll start with you, Jerusha, because I think of the two of you, you more recently, moved back to India. So when you were transitioning back into India and to professional life, how did you prove your, professional worth and value here?
I mean, I started my own practice. How many people can do that? I fully give credit to my LLM. I don't think I would be able to do this today. It also comes with a certain amount of trust in me that she has a specific niche knowledge in the field, and not just in India, but also in the US. I also worked at an entertainment law firm there. And those are great transferable skills. In fact, I mirror a lot of what I did in the entertainment law practice and how, the partners operated. And I kind of do the same work now. Uh, I don't think I would be able to do that. I don't think any of my peers from my batch are doing the same thing. The only people that actually started their own practices all have LLMs from the US. So I'm not saying it's an it and all. I'm not saying your education in India has shortfalls, but I just think that if there is a niche area of practice in any field that you want to do, knowledge is always really important because it sets your foundation. If you're like, I think that if I was at a law firm, I think I would be able to scale, but it would be such a slow process because you're sort of surrounded by the same people all the time who are thinking the same way. This just gave me a lot more exposure, and it kickstarted my career a lot faster because you realize sometimes terminology, while it's the same word, for example, the word publishing and book publishing means something very different to what it means in music publishing. Some of my peers are just learning it. I learned it day one. I already knew, I was all ready to have a very sustained conversation and have very innate knowledge on those specific topics. I don't think any of us had, maybe one of us is doing better than the other. I don't think that's a comparison I want to make also. But it just kickstarted my career a lot faster than somebody who's going through the grind of reaching to the ranks.
Thanks, Chirusha. That makes a lot of sense. And Rush, in terms of your transition back into India, do you remember if there were skill sets that you learned in the US, apart from, you've already mentioned, certain skill sets, but kind of that were particularly critical in helping you transition into professional life here?
Yes. So when I returned to India and entered the industrial ecosystem, I realized something important, that technical knowledge alone does not differentiate you, and the systems thinking does. The Indian corporate landscape is dynamic, fast moving, and relationship driven. What helped me transition smoothly was my ability to kind of structure the conversations and decision. Three specific skills I feel stood out as a development on from the university. One is structured communication. So in client meetings, I learned to present proposals with clarity, problem statement, option, cost implication, risk factors. Now that format builds credibility very quickly. Then was your process orientation. US education system emphasizes, on repeatable systems. I implemented documentation workflows, vendor evaluation matrix, some of this which we kind of not train, performance review dashboards, of course, when you're using these systems now you have it, but doing it for your own. And that immediately demonstrated value. And the third part is, comfort with global standards. Because of exposure to international best practices, compliance frameworks, quality expectations, I could align our processes with the global OEM, which is our customers' expectation. So importantly, I didn't position myself as foreign trained. I positioned myself as systems trained. And that distinction matters. Students should understand that, your degree doesn't prove value. Your ability to apply frameworks does. So the transition back becomes smooth when you bring structure to complexity.
Thank you, Rishabh. That was really helpful. I think some good skills mentioned there. So we will now come to our final section, and I will address these questions to both of you so you can decide who goes first in each one. We can keep the answers relatively brief. One is for both of you, what should students in your field, or broadly speaking, start working on or building on in terms of their education or their hands-on experiences before they head to university, wherever that might be?
Should I go first?
Go for it, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So, some silly things. So before going to university, especially in fields like engineering, IT, whatever, there are three foundations which I will come to. But the basic is that, if you're a vegetarian, to go for a cooking class, if your stomach is happy, everything else will follow. So remaining healthy and happy is the key. Don't be stingy to take the most economical apartment. If you can afford, take a better quality apartment. Make sure there's a washer dryer. This is very stupid, but it's very important. Spend money on making sure that whatever your goal is actually done, and learn some of the most basic household work like cleaning, washing, do a net practice. And I'll give you an example. When I put a woolen t-shirt in my dryer for the first time, it went with my size, but it came with the size when I was 4 years old. So some of these basic things, if you understand, it's very important. So don't assume that your mother that is actually scolding you is for your good. So on a serious note, one is your intellectual curiosity. Don't study for exams. Start asking, why does the system work? So curiosity will actually accelerate your adaptation later. Then comes your communication skills. I don't know how many of you guys, would actually be, do this, but your public speaking, your structured writing, logical argumentation, these are force multipliers when you go to the US. So if you develop them earlier, they'll really help you. Then your basic analytical discipline. So learn to interpret data. Even basic spreadsheet modeling or logical structuring will give you an edge. At the end of the day, the university will amplify what you already have. So if you arrive curious and communicative, the growth curve will be exponential. So to make the best of what you can do. Jarusha, you can.
Rushabh had such cute things to say. I have very, very technical things to say. My one thing is please set up a LinkedIn account.
Yeah.
I think that's so, so important. I had one, but I don't think at least I don't know. I think this is an Indian thing where they don't tell you not to brag because they tell you that nazar is real, right? Like everyone says, don't talk about what you do, talk about what you do. That's the only way you will build a brand for yourself. You are a brand, irrespective of what you are doing, you are a brand. You're not a commodity. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that you are a brand and you represent something that you are doing. Please talk about what you're doing because how are people going to know? They're not going to read your mind. They have to see it somewhere. I know my LinkedIn is not up to date, but my Instagram is. Like, I try and make sure that one channel is active. And I realize with my clients, they're all entertainment clients. So then Instagram is a more useful platform. And I don't come from the entertainment space. My parents don't come from it. I have no family in the space. I have no family in the legal space also. So I did this all on my own. If I didn't build a brand for myself, how would people know about me, right? So I think that's very important. I think getting yourself familiar with technology is very important because in law school in India, we were not allowed to take our laptops in class. It's very different in classrooms in the US. You have to take your. So when I was outlining, I wrote notes down, which was the dumbest mistake ever because I had to then sit and physically type all those notes back into an electronic format and then have a concise outline. Please don't do that. Like the make technology your best friend. I saw some of the Asian countries are a lot more advanced in technology. They would have those pens that scanned material, which was so cool. Like I would just look at them and I'm typing out notes from my textbooks, and these guys have already scanned. Or, transcribers that would like assimilate all of what your professor said in class. Genius. Why was I? Sometimes you lose focus in class. You already have a transcribed note. That's brilliant. And now you have access to that. I think this meeting is also has AI that's transcribing the notes. It's so important to get yourself familiar with technology, even if it's using Word. to, its maximum capacity. Like it's so small, but you'll realize the importance once you go there. And I think something I did that a lot of my peers didn't do is reaching out to professors beforehand. Like I did my research. Deborah knows this, that my research was like very extensive, and I wanted to talk to everyone about everything, even if it was the silliest thing. I would pick her brain, I would pick their brain, I would pick everyone's brain. I wanted to know what the class looked like, how best should I, like learn, or and my curiosity was very important because as soon as I reached class, the professors already knew who I was. And some of these, especially adjunct faculty, work within the space. So they were entertainment lawyers, they were agents, they were big execs in really cool companies who created a lot more exposure for me. I'm not saying it necessarily materializes to something, but they did take me for a lot of like conferences or meetings, and that made me more confident and also exposed me to having a larger network.
Thanks, Jerusha and Rishabh. That was very helpful. The last question that we're going for is once again on soft skills. Were specifics? So now looking back at your transition, now you both built careers, established careers to different extents very successfully here. Were there certain habits of and ways of thinking that you developed during your US education that have stayed with you all these years? And I know you've already mentioned certain things. If you just want to reiterate, that's also fine. If you have something new to say, that's also fine. What has really stayed with you all these years and still undergirds your professional journey?
Actually, I have something small, because I've mentioned so much already and what my transferable skills were. I don't mean this to be disrespectful in any way, but I think I learned the art of calling people by their first name. I think we tend to not do that very often in India. We give
Yeah.
It's out of respect, which is great, but I think it comes from a place where I'm older than you, so therefore you have to call me sir, ma'am, or by my last name. No, we're all peers at the end of the day, right? We're all dealing with the same kind of people. I think I felt like, in a room when you had to refer to somebody as sir or ma'am, I felt small, and that never happened in a US classroom or in any place I went to, because everybody called me Jerusha. So I make it a practice now, even when my juniors refer to me or anyone talks to me, please call me Jerusha because it's a lovely name. But also just like refer to me as somebody that you can talk to. I don't come with, when you say ma'am, you're almost hesitant to come and speak to that person. I think that was very important to learn. I'm not being disrespectful when I speak to judges. I say your lordship or sir, but that's because they're a judge, right? Like I'm not going to a priest and being like, hey, buddy, what's up? No, they come with designations. That's okay. But I don't ask anyone to call me Advocate Jerusha. Like that's a bit much, just use my name, let it be a free flowing conversation. I think a lot of, at least a professional like me, I require people that work with me to have a lot of trust in me. The moment there is a second barrier where you're giving me respect on, like, I mean, added respect with a prefix, that just takes it back a notch where you're like, oh, should I tell this person? Should I be comfortable with this person? No, I like my free flowing, friendly nature to sort of percolate through my career also. So I think that was just something small, but it was important for me to learn.
And I just clarify and just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you will also agree with this that we're making some comparisons, but it's not to put Indian culture down in any way.
No,
But
absolutely not.
just
It's
that,
not
yeah,
disrespect.
but
No,
we're
no,
just
it's not.
showing what US culture gave you during your experience there that have
Right,
helped you with
right, right, right.
globally relevant careers and successful careers in India.
Yeah.
Rishabh, go ahead. You want to add?
Yeah.
Thanks to
So
Rishabh. Yes. Sorry,
yeah,
Rishabh.
I completely agree with Jerusha. I mean, if you really want to work in the team, that's exactly what should happen. So two habits that stayed with me permanently. This is more technical for me. So it says evidence before opinion. We're so easily, giving opinions about everything so quickly. So at my universities, we were trained to justify the position. So today, whether I'm evaluating a vendor or, investing in an automation company, data is important, and what are the assumptions. And second part is the continuous iteration. This is, I think, the most important habit that I developed, and which means that nothing is final. Okay, there is a constant improvement in systems, and processes continue to get refined, which in today's world, if you are from the production background, or if you'll understand, you'll be familiar with these words called Six Sigma and Kaizen theory, which theory means that keep doing small improvements every day, and one day it'll become a big positive impact. So this mindset prevents your complacency and focuses on constant involvement, which I think was a great learning, and perhaps the most important habit. Viewing education as ongoing training, not as a finished product. So I'm part of many associations and groups where there is a deliberation on new learning, not only AI, but many business and personal improvements. So the US classroom gave me a mental framework. The workplace keeps sharpening it. And if I could leave students with one thought today, it would be this, that, degrees will open the doors, but the capabilities will sustain your careers. So I think that's a very important aspect.
Thank you so much, Jerusha and Rishabh. That was an absolutely fantastic sharing of thoughts and perspectives and stories about your education. I just loved, I think, the picture that we got of the US classroom, real sense of, what it's like to be in the classroom, what are the methodologies that they employ, and how that really helped you all build your professional journeys here. And then definitely, yes, we got that sense of what it takes to actually transition from a global education to a practice here in India, and to a professional sort of practice here in India, and the skills needed for that. So thank you so much. That was really insightful, really informative, really interesting and engaging. I really enjoyed listening to this session. For all of you participating, attending this session, this is a great time now to ask questions. We're opening up for Q&A. I will say, though, this is not an admissions-focused session, so I can see a few questions about admissions and, applications and so on, OPT, etc. For all of these topics, we've put our email address on the slide. Feel free to reach out to the email address, and we will guide you to resources that can help you with these topics. But if you have questions about, for Jerusha and Rushabh, about professional journeys, how to transition from, what are the skills that you should develop? How do you transition from your education to your, professional life, and especially within the a globalized world? This is a great time to ask those questions from people who really not just talking the talk, but have walked the walk as well. So let me just quickly look through these questions. I think there is, let me just see. There's someone who said, may I ask a question now? So now is a good time if you want to ask a question. So I think there are some questions about qualification. So for instance, if you have, if you've studied in the law in the US, and you come back to India to practice. So I think there's one saying, I'm seeking to return to India after course completion and getting the minimal experience as per US laws. I'm bar qualified. To Jerusha, I don't know whether you want to mention anything in terms of whether there are qualifications needed to, for your Indian practice, or what is relevant to study abroad and then come back and practice in India.
It honestly depends which area of law you want to practice in. If you do I don't recommend doing a general LLM. If you are, then you're doing it with certificates. That's what I did. I think if you're going to study in the US, then your aim is to come back with a transferable skill, to come back with a niche knowledge, with a niche practice. So do AI entertainment, something in finance and OIP or data privacy, things like that, that you'll get an edge over your peers, because I think that's the advantage that you would get, because you bring back knowledge, right? Otherwise, it's just another degree that you've added to your bank, which is not a bad thing, but if you're looking at positioning yourself correctly, yeah.
There's a question about skills, and we've actually talked a lot about skills and many different skills in this session. But maybe you can reiterate or just highlight a couple. The question is, what are the skills other than communication to gain a head start in the career search? So within that context specifically, gaining a head start, maybe when you're just transitioning and you're looking for positions, what are skills that are helpful?
There is only one word according to me, and that is grit. Okay. So, I mean, whatever you intend to do, just make sure your perseverance is, on the top, and you just keep doing it all the time.
I
Thank
think,
you.
like I said this earlier, but LinkedIn, please, guys, it's
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
important. People are looking at your digital footprint. It's become more important than ever. So make sure that's clean, and the brand you are trying to portray is what you are as a person. I don't have different personalities. Like a lot of people have a work life that's separate, and I'm the same person everywhere. I chat to my clients about the same conversations that I have with my friends. So that's the brand that I bring to the table. So that's what my social media presence will look like. And so you need to establish that for yourself, because people are looking at that in addition to obviously your resume and things like that. But cleaning up your LinkedIn, creating a LinkedIn, being a conversation starter, that's really important. People want to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Here's another question. In the professional journey, how important is the role of ethics in the context of ethical leadership in corporates? Maybe you, Rishabh, this is something you could address.
Well,
And I think this person adds where the grooming starts in academic classrooms. So maybe if you can reflect on how the classroom also plays a role in this.
so I mean, the role of ethics, vertically in any field remains the same. So that's pretty much, uh, a non-negotiable. So, uh, I mean, that's pretty much it. And you ask a question that grooming starts. Yes, so you learn so many things about that. In fact, your orientation when you're going to the university, talks about all of these elements on about ethics and plagiarism and all. I think Jerusha is an expert in that. So perhaps the lawyer will speak better on that.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that is
Rishabh.
true.
Yeah.
That is true. I literally had a subject matter on it, so that was 100% true. But you learn small things like do not plagiarize. I think that's very important. You think that's only at a university level? I try doing that in your work and try doing that in your practice. I swear to God, you will be hit with a lawsuit. Like my entire job is that protecting my clients from infringing other people's copyrights. And what is that to the baseline? It's plagiarism. So they tell you not to do it for a reason. So, that started in the classroom. My peers in like law school would pick up research papers and, give it to my professors. And at the time, the tech was not really great. But the US classroom, they have softwares in place that are flagging these things down. And it's almost a crime in some universities, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but the laws on plagiarism are very strict. Learn that because it's so important. It's so important to cite sources, give people credit in general, in your regular life, in your area of practice. For me, that's the key. Like that's so important. I don't use AI because I don't know who to credit when I take help of another source, right? No disrespect towards people using it or people building that platform, but I need to cite my sources. I need to give credit to people. I need to ensure that I'm not violating anyone's rights, whether it's their privacy rights or their copyrights or any other. And I think that starts from the classroom. I learned it through not having to plagiarize essays.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Um, Anyone else? Last question. We're at 6:30, so it's actually time up, but this is your very last chance for a very last question. Anyone else wants to ask a question? All right. So, as I've said before, anything regarding uh, applications, admissions, and so on, do reach out to the email address and we'll guide you to resources. But for now, we will draw the session to a close. A really, really big thank you to Jerusha and Rishabh. You've been just fantastic speakers. I've loved the insights you've had, the stories you've shared. And we're just so grateful that you could be here, and take the time from, I'm sure, very busy schedules. We know that Jerusha is working right to the last minute. And I'm sure both of you have really high pressure, busy work life, but you've taken the time to be here and to share your experiences and wisdom and knowledge with us. So thank you so much. Um, Thank you to everyone participating as well. And we wish you all the best in your journeys. Do stay in touch with us. We will be having more alumni sessions like these where US alumni will be sharing their experiences and their kind of hard won knowledge and wisdom on various topics relevant to Indian audiences. So do follow us, sign up for our updates, and join us for the next session. For now, have a good evening and see you next time.
Great. See you. It was a pleasure.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
See you guys. Bye, Jerusha.
Bye.